let's talk about the tale of the Mad Arab.
Necronomicon is coming.
So I thought I'd take a minute to talk about the allegorical meaning behind the testimony of the Mad Arab Part 1, Part 2, and really kind of delve into his experience and what drove him to write the book. I like to take things in an allegorical nature because not only are you reading the words, but you can interpret a lot of different things about his tale. If you've read the testimony of the Mad Arab, the Part 1 and Part 2, you will probably recall, or if this is the first time for you hearing it because you're interested in the book, then I'll try to summarize it for you. Basically, the Mad Arab, who is not named, by the way, he does not have the name Abdul al-Hazred, which would tie him to the H.P. Lovecraft stuff, but it's just kind of the term that's given to him, I guess. So basically, he is camping out in the mountains at night, and he's awoken. He builds a fire near a couple of standing stones, and he is woken up in the middle of the night hearing some strange noises, and the stone that he was near happens to start floating. Upon further inspection of the area, he finds a group of cultists performing a ritual, and he doesn't want to be seen at this point, so he tries to hide. He accidentally makes a noise, and they chase after him. And so he's running away, and he's freaking out, and then he turns around and happens to see that they stop chasing him. The robes of the cultists are there, and he goes over with a stick, and he pokes at them, and he happens to realize that they are all gone. Where did they go? The book doesn't really tell you. But that's when he notices the stone with the 3 seals of Mashu on it, the Bandar, the Elder Sign, and the Aura. And he also finds the silver plate, which is the seal that he wears around his neck. I'd like to take a little bit of a segue, if my cat could stop pushing the computer. I know that several of other of my videos, she's done this, and she's really pushing at the screen right now, so I thought I'd just show her off and how she's a little bit hyper. Anyway, Pickles, get out of here. So, I do kind of want to make a shout out to a couple of my friends over at the Emerald Owl. They are a wonderful group of people that make a lot of fantastic jewelry and t-shirts. No, this isn't a product placement. They are really wonderful friends of mine. I just thought I'd show off a couple of things that they do. They actually made me a Necronomicon seal necklace. And, well, actually, I got 2 of them. One with white on black, the other with black on white. And I really love the fact that they could make custom jobs for me. It's fantastic. So, anyway, to go along with that, and she's still rubbing against the screen. I'm really sorry about this, guys, but, she's a little bit of a runt, a little hyper. So, let's take the testimony of the Mad Arab, the first part, and let's kind of dissect it a little bit. Now, he is camping out in the mountains of Mashu. The mountains of Mashu are twin peaks, and there's supposed to be both where the sun rises and the sun sets. From the different research that I've done, these mountains can be kind of attributed to the pineal gland. Now, if anybody knows anything about the pineal gland, it has a lot to do with psychic ascension and reaching a higher plane of consciousness. So, given the fact that he's in the mountains of Mashu, it ties into how he is reaching a higher level of consciousness, and that's when he is brought into the system, and he begins his journey of learning all these different things that he eventually writes down in the Necronomicon. So you could take it that he's actually at those mountains, which are real mountains. I think they're also associated with the Epic of Gilgamesh as well. Or you could say that he is reaching a higher level of consciousness, and that's where he gets all of this information, kind of like reaching the Akashic Records through astral travel or astral meditation or meditation in general. And so an interesting thing to note is how he mentions that he uses the herb Oleierbos to perform these rituals and gain all of this knowledge. Just like I've talked about before, Oleierbos or stinging nettle can really, apparently, I haven't done it, of course, but it's supposed to be able to help you reach a higher plane. It's a little bit of a hallucinogen, I guess. And so you have either he's really in the mountains, in a set of mountains, or he has reached that peak and been able to take all this information through the activation of the pineal gland and reaching a higher plane. So you can take it one way, you could take it the other way, and either way it still presents us with that knowledge that he was able to gain and then write down in the book. Now, if you jump over to the testimony of the Mad Arab, the second part at the end of the book, he's really scrambling to write down everything he knows. I think he repeats himself a couple of times talking about how to, make sure that you use the Sword of the Watcher properly, make sure to use the, to cast a Circle of Flower properly, and he really kind of tells the tale of his own demise. I mean, through the book, he's talking about how you really shouldn't, you really need to be watchful about working with these different entities, and the system kind of does him in, because he talks about the demon Zastur, if I can remember correctly, and how it's a foul demoness that slays in the night, and then that sign, that sigil, ends up appearing to him behind him, and it's glowing for a really long time, so he really feels like he's under threat. And he also talks about how he can look at the words that he's written down, but it's almost as if he sees them, but she keeps moving. It's almost as if he sees them, but his brain can't process it. He's losing the ability to divine this information, so he's really trying to get it out. He calls it this is the book of the servant of the gods, but at the same time, he's asking what god or what goddess had failed him. So the entire system basically has done him in. So the question is whether or not he's trotted to some place that he really shouldn't have. I mean, maybe working on all those different planetary spheres was a bad idea. He also said that he attained all this knowledge in the realm of the Igigi, but at the same time, he feels threatened by them. I mean, if you go with the H.P. Lovecraft story of what happened to Abdul Alhazred, which this person may have been or may not have, he was ripped up by some unseen entity, basically just torn apart in the city square back in, I believe it was 600 something AD, or you could just go with the fact of what's written, where we really don't know what happened to the guy. I mean, he said that he would take his own copy of the Necronomicon to his grave. So the question is there something in what he wrote that's not in the one that was found, preserved, translated, and is what we have today? That's why I think that there's a lot of gold to be dug in doing the different research, in researching the Sumerian, Babylonian, Akkadian pantheon that this book is based off of, and really getting to the nitty-gritty of what the different entities are that are described in the book. I mean, some entities are described as very, very negative in the book, and in other epics, they're described as very beautiful, benevolent beings with very different purposes. So there's a lot to be taken any way that you look at it. I mean, with any system, you are growing as a person, and with any rite, any ritual, you are experimenting and growing in your power. Even though the book says different things, like how the world is going to go black, and I've already kind of dissected this in another video, where the world really probably won't go black. It's just you're able to be more focused. So when you read a book like this, you really have to you take it with a grain of salt at first and try to divine what the meaning is behind that. I mean, there's a couple of other things that I could touch on, like the one of the names of Marduk is Nibiru. And if you've done any research on that kind of thing, and if Pixie would stop rubbing around the back of my computer, I'm being surrounded by cats, in case you can't notice. So if you take a look at the spirit Nibiru, who manages all the stars in their ways, I believe, then you get into the hypothesis of the lost planet of Nibiru, the one that's supposed to disturb the orbit of Jupiter, the one that's mentioned on clay tablets in Sumeria, and really wonder what that's got to do with it being the name of one of the 50 names of Marduk. And it'll also help you divine a couple of the other things that aren't exactly listed in the book. Like, I mean, there's a couple of spirits that the Mad Arab himself didn't even summon. There's a couple of them where, I will not comment on this one, or there's another one that says just master 10 of the 10 other ones first, and doesn't give you any idea what that particular spirit would help out with. I'd be looking them up in my book to give you guys the names, but I'm trying to control some catastrophe. No pun intended, although I do love a pun. So basically, if you want to learn anything about the allegorical meaning behind the Necronomicon, really look up Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian mythology, and look up different things on ascending, to different planes of existence. You really got to step into metaphysical and metacognitive theory to really understand what the book is trying to get at, because it in itself is a grimoire, but there's so much more to it just being a grimoire of, if I put these materials together and poof, I can make such and such happen. You got to dig deep into the meanings behind these different things to really question and ask yourself, okay, what is the Mad Arab trying to tell me? There's so many different tips, tricks, and traps in the book where you have to follow it, in a certain sequential order in order for anything to really open up for you. And you really have to read the book and dig down letter by letter. That's why it's recommended by the Mad Arab himself that you rewrite the entire book by hand so you can kind of memorize it, because as you're writing those sentences or even the power words, you might get a vibe or you might get a better understanding of it. Another thing is to work with as many of the different spirits as you possibly can, and they could even tell you different things that they would be able to do for you that's not listed in the book. It might be individual person to person, or it might just be something that maybe I figured out and eventually you would figure out. So that's a little bit touching on the allegory or the allegorical meaning of the Simon Necronomicon, and let's see what else I can come up with to dissect for you guys when it comes to studying the Book of the Black Earth. Good hunting.